Okay, here we are in Australia with an amazing Aboriginal healer called Harold in the Daintree rainforest, which is up in the tropical bit in the far northeast of the country under New Guinea. It's an amazing place, oldest rainforest in the world. Okay, and here we are. We hung back as the group dispersed at the end of the bushwalk. Harold did not disappear into the trees this time. As the last people melted off towards their cars, the young man with Tourette's syndrome reappeared from the nearby wooden houses to scream high-pitched expletives at them. Harold turned to me. "I guess that's your boy coming for healing then." He nodded towards Rowan, who was running in circles, shadowed by Kristen. "I'm Rupert," I shook hands, "and this is my wife Kristen." They shook hands too. "And that's Rowan over there. He's autistic, yes." The words sounded so lame there in the bright jungle sunlight. Harold was quiet. "Yeah, the blokes at the lodge told me you'd be coming. I worked with some young men with autism before. Your boy there strikes me as a bright spark. Shouldn't be too much trouble." It was so strange to be talking to a shaman in plain English, even my own colonial vernacular English of blokes and young fellas. It seemed almost too direct, too normal. Could it really be this easy, this casual? "Let's go for some tea and damper and talk it over," suggested Harold, and led the way to a long hut with thatch palm roofing, a little way off into the trees. Open-sided, it had benches and a long wooden table with bread and jam and a kettle whistling on a slow fire. Tea and damper. Damper being soda bread cooked in the ashes of a fire, similar to what the Scots call bannock and the Bushmen call ash bread. Served with jam and a nice hot cup of tea, it felt so, well, British, so colonial. As I munched the bread and jam, which was really very good, Harold asked me to tell him our story so far, so I did, trying to find the right words. "I guess what I'm looking for is healing, not a cure," I said, watching as Rowan looked at a book in the sunlight a small distance away. "I don't want Rowan to stop being autistic, not at all. In fact, I'm seeing so many gifts in his autism now that I honestly wouldn't exchange his autism for normality. I just want him to be as effective and happy and successful as he can be." I paused, not enjoying the sound of my own voice. "I guess I just want to be the best father I can be. And so often I don't even know if what I'm doing is the right thing. I make mistakes all the time." We sat there in silence a while. Then Harold spoke. He told us of his grandfather who'd been a healer, himself from a long line of healers, and how when Harold had reached adolescence, his grandfather had begun teaching him about the properties of plants, the geography of the spirit world, how there were sacred waterfalls and ancestral grave sites all over this vast primordial forest from which he and the Yalanji's other healers drew their power. How outsiders had started to come to him for healing, white Australians, working in the area as incomers from the cities in the south, drawn by tourism and the search for a better life, and less racist than the longer-term cane and beef farmers of the area. People who'd heard of him began approaching him with ailments, both physical and mental, and word had spread. He reached into a bag that was sitting at the wooden bench next to him, pulled out a little wallet of photographs. "I guess because of that, people started coming up here to see me from Sydney and Melbourne. This young fella had problems with blood cancer. I took him on long distance, did the healings from here. That can work almost as well, you know." So he glanced at where Rowan was making letters in the sand with Kristen. "R-O-W-A-N. And then P-O-O. Poo! Rowan collapsed into peals of laughter. "Let's see what we can do for your boy over there, eh? Why don't you see if you come over here and we'll smoke him?" "Smoke him?" Kristen sounded alarmed. Harold laughed. "Yes, just sacred smoke from the bark of a tree that cleanses you. It's what we do. So I can see what's going on in there and deflect any bad spirits that might be operating, you know." How does that work?" Kristen asked. Harold smiled. "Don't worry, he just sits in a chair and I wave smoke from a particular bark around him. It's easy, nothing to worry about. After that, I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about how we might go on." "What kind of bark? And what does the smoke do exactly?" I asked. Harold's face closed. "There's some things I can tell you and some things I can't. Oh, and no pictures or filming, okay?" I'd been prepared for this. Whereas the shamans and healers of Mongolia and Namibia had been easygoing, even encouraging of filming and photography, I'd heard that in Australia, as in the States among the Native Americans, healers were often actively opposed to it. No worries, I strolled over to where Rowan had been stick writing in the leaf mould of the forest floor, trying to keep it casual, but as so often before, with my heart in my mouth. What if he didn't want to? What if he'd come all this way and he just wasn't into it? Would that matter? My gut told me it would. But it also told me that if I showed my anxiety, it'd be put too much pressure on him and he might shut down. "Hey, Scub," I said, my voice self-consciously light. "Want to come meet Harold?" "Time to meet the shamans!" To my intense relief, Rowan got up without fuss, let his writing stick drop and walked over with me to the plastic lawn chair that sat a little apart from the thatched hut in a small clearing of its own, where Harold now bent over a slow, smouldering fire of palm leaves and great pieces of a kind of bark I hadn't seen before, each section of which looked a bit like a curved turtle shell or plate. He was blowing on the fire, getting it to flame. Cool as you like, Rowan just sat in the chair, hands on his thighs, and Harold picked up a large piece of the burning bark, waved it to and fro to stoke and then kill the bright flame, and then waved the aromatic, cedar-smelling smoke around Rowan's head. All the while, Rowan just sat there, quiet, easy. He normally never just sat still, unless, I realised, it was for a shaman. The whole thing lasted maybe 3 minutes, if that. Then, as Rowan still seemed calm, Harold nodded to another younger Kuku-Yalanji man who'd wandered up, seemingly randomly, but whom Harold clearly regarded as some kind of assistant. The younger man, his hair bound into a long dark ponytail, nodded good-naturedly at us. "G'day," he said, and squatted next to Harold, holding up a small ceramic mug, kind of like this one I'm drinking tea from right now. Harold let the bark drop back into the slow fire and put his hands on Rowan's head. I expected to see Rowan flinch, pull away, yell. He did no such thing, but merely sat there, the same strange, unusual, un-Rowan-like calm settling upon him as Harold ran his fingers lightly over his scalp, seeming to give little pulls at the air just above his cranium, not unlike the way Ghost had done in Mongolia, then flicking his fingers into the mug. Curious, Kristen and I craned our necks to look at the inside of the mug. It was empty. And then, gradually, it wasn't. Right there, in front of our eyes, as Harold flicked his fingers into it, the bottom of the mug began to fill with a strange, viscous, plasma-like fluid. I looked at Kristen, she looked at me, we looked into the cup. More mucus, slowly filling. Harold seemed to be pulling it out of Rowan's head somehow and flicking it into the mug. Yet there could be no sleight of hand, his sleeves were rolled up, there was nothing in the palms of his hands that could be hidden because his hands were wide open when he flicked. You could clearly see the palms. Yet the mucus in the mug kept filling, little by little. And nothing physical was coming out of Rowan's head, just Harold's hands on his scalp, then pulling lightly at the air above his head, just flicking the fingers into the cup, but nothing visible, nothing coming out of it. Just the stuff in the bottom of the cup slowly getting more and more full. Mind-blowing, literally. I mean, I'd seen all manner of strange and amazing things with the Bushmen and other healers over the years, but this, nothing like this, ever. The mug was by now about a quarter full. Suddenly, Harold's hands stopped moving, and he gave Rowan a little pat on his shoulders. Rowan sighed, deep and happy sounding, got off the chair, and came and hugged me round the middle. "He'll be all right," Harold said, showing us the contents of the mug briefly, then tossed the mess into the fire. "What? I mean, how?" Kristen was lost for words, and so for once was I. Harold shrugged. "It's what we do."